Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining us today, Paralympian, Paralympic medalist, Pan American Games medalist. Today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Jamal Hill. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Happy to be here. SwimSwam fam. Thank you for having me, Mr. Hodges.
I don't know if anyone calls me Mr. Hodges, but I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on and being here today. We're going to cover a wide variety of topics, but first we're starting with U.S. para swimming, the state of para swimming in our country today, and looking forward to this summer's World Championships. So just first off, are you qualified for World Championships? And if so, what are you swimming there? How's it looking?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So that press release just came out on last Thursday. I guess that was like April 16th, April 14th, something like that. So our U.S. para team headed for World Championships. We're actually going to Madeira in Portugal. Beautiful island, should be an amazing place. 25 athletes named to that team. 25 athletes. Only I think there are 7, but there may even be 6. I think only 6 of those 25 are men. No, there are 7. There are 7 of us men that have been named to that team. Okay. And the other, I'm not a mathematician here, but the other 18, 16 athletes are female athletes. So excited to be a part of that really, really small group of men. I'll be the only S9 athlete representing. And my plans are to swim the 50-meter freestyle and the 100-meter freestyle. Hopefully also we'll be able to debut. This will be the debut for mixed relays, which is a huge thing in swimming. So really excited for that.
Yeah, no kid. I mean, it sounds like you'll have at least a few medal opportunities. You were a Tokyo bronze medalist in the S950 freestyle. So hopefully, obviously you can maybe get a little more hardware in that category. So how's the team looking from your end? Just as a whole, what are your thoughts on the team, especially as you mentioned with those mixed medley relays debuting at these championships?
Yeah, I think our team has a really, really good show. I won't speak too much about my individual events. I'm a little bit not superstitious, but I think, some ego can get into that and it doesn't always serve you. So just know I'm training and, I'm obviously going to do my best. I'm going to bring a high level of intensity and preparation to the event. So, regarding the larger team, though, really excited for our medleys. We have an extremely strong women's team, and it's obviously represented just in the makeup of our world champs team. And it was represented in the makeup of our Tokyo team. The women on our national competition level usually outnumber the men either 2 or 3 to 1. They're dominant. They're always knocking down world records. So to be able to get into a relay, our women were, almost 2-time. I think we might have came in out of 16 countries, we came in 15th, so that's going to be a really powerful equalizer for us. So that's, again, we got somebody on the team named Robert Griswold. He's kind of like the Rain Man of Paralympic swimming. He could really speak to, how the numbers and stats line up and where we would be expected to place. But I do know that we definitely have a shot at a medal for relays with the men and women coming together. And yeah, man. So there you go. That's my piece on that. You asked one more thing, brother.
I can ask another question.
Okay.
I've spoken to Robert Griswold before.
Okay.
I love talking numbers with that guy. He's great. I'm glad you brought him up. I'll be excited to see how this U.S. team does at these World Championships this summer. Another team that I would like to get your perspective on is the Ukraine team, which is historically one of the best para teams worldwide. Do you know, or have you spoken to anyone on the team? Have you heard rumblings just within the community of if their team has been impacted at all by the war in Ukraine?
Full transparency, I've not spoken to anyone on the Ukrainian Paralympic team in any capacity. I do know other athletes that represent Ukraine in other Olympic and Paralympic sports. Overall, whether or not they've been able to train at full capacity, again, I'm not aware of, but just to be able to speak to the emotional, psychological, mental strain and toll of, ultimately not having a home, your family being in danger, the worry, the concern. I think obviously the Paralympic movement and the Olympic movement, it's all about sport uniting us. So my only hope is that regardless of the condition that those athletes are in physically, and whether or not they're able to bring home medals for their countries or not, even still being previously one of the most dominant countries in swimming, especially in the higher classes. It's just that all of our medals, from Team USA to any other country that goes out there and competes, is doing so, for a greater cause, a cause of peace in this world, a cause of, I don't even know the proper word for it, but just they're just like banishing war. It's archaic. We don't need to live in a world like this anymore. Not that we ever really did need to, but that ultimately all of us are able to go out there and honor and represent something that's bigger than ourselves, bigger than even our own home countries, and is really represented in this. It's almost this world order that's going to be united and wants to see everybody, at least wants to see everybody able to sleep in their own beds at night, and not have to worry about anything terrible happening. So that's my piece on that. Sending a lot of love and support to all Ukrainian athletes, and also, not to be insensitive, but to also to a lot of Russian athletes, and other smaller countries. Obviously these are the two big factions, but the smaller countries that are also caught up in that. A lot of times we get caught on the tail end, right? So not everyone is making the decisions. Not everyone wants to go to war. Not everyone wants to be in these places and do these things, but they, still have to carry that stigma. They still have to carry that responsibility as countrymen. So just sending love and light out to kind of, our global community involved in this turmoil right now.
I love that you brought up this point of the athletes, kind of being on the tail end of a war that certainly neither side really chose athletically, right? So I am curious about your perspective on Russian and Belarusian athletes, being banned from competitions, para competitions, all competition this summer, at least in the aquatic realm. Do you think that's fair?
Quite frankly, I don't think it's a matter of fairness. I don't think it's fair that one country has invaded another one, right? I don't think it's fair that there's a lot of things that I don't think are fair. But one thing that I do believe is true is that the sins of the father will always be visited on the children. And this is something that it's unfortunate, 100%. I think that it's extremely unfortunate. But I also think I think it's in some ways not even all that significant, man. Like there are people losing their lives over land, over property, over physical things, and yeah, I think it's maybe there should be more sanctions involved, like beyond obviously like the athletic realm. But it's also one of those types of things to where governing bodies can on an international scale can kind of only implement things where they do have the power to implement them. They do have the power to at least make some type of stance, make some type of statement. And again, it's extremely unfortunate that these athletes won't be able to compete throughout the course of this year, and that they have to, ultimately, again, kind of have that punishment, whether or not they are supportive or not supportive of what's being done on a national level in terms of their country. I do think that anytime something like this happens, just in the specific scope of competition, right? Well, we're not seeing the best competitive field. So that's a fact. The Russians, Belarusian athletes, they're definitely some of the top in swimming in the Paralympic space. But again, also, there just has to be certain lines drawn. There has to be certain lines drawn. If these athletes not being able to represent their country, if this ultimately country not having the opportunity to be esteemed, to be put up as, because that's what this platform is of the Paralympics, right? When these athletes win, these countries are esteemed. That national anthem plays, and the whole world takes a moment and of silence to honor, right? How this country has supported these athletes, and ultimately how we're all supporting this collective vision. So if that country is not buying into that collective vision and they're actually working to tear it apart, well then, yeah, I don't believe that maybe the athletes still did the work, but that country and the representatives, well, they don't earn that right to be celebrated at this point in time.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. I appreciate that answer. So as mentioned before, you medaled in Tokyo at those 2020 Paralympics. I want to get your perspective on that as well. Just, a pre-war era that wasn't even a year ago, right? Was that your first Paralympic experience? Was that your first time going?
That was my first Paralympic. So it was from what I hear, unlike any other before.
Right.
And yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So I just wanted to get your take on the level of camaraderie that you felt there, not only with Team USA, but just as an athlete of the world, right? Getting to be together with all these different countries in that common space. What kind of togetherness were you able to take from that?
One aspect of togetherness I was able to take away from a national perspective, helping your teammates keep their head up. And this may sound a little strange, but I think what united us nationally, as Team USA the most, were the times when athletes did not get medals. Because that was the biggest opportunity for camaraderie. That was the biggest opportunity for support. Obviously, very well, we all people get to walk away in some large, like, kind of external validation sense, feeling like it was not all for naught, right? Like, I didn't spend all my time and resources these past 5 years to not come home with something tangible. But the same way, less than 1% make it to the games. Well, now you're at the games. This is the tournament of the world champions. Everybody here is literally the best in their country. They're all the best in their country. So yeah, it's even, again, less than 1% of the world's best that are going to come home with some type of hardware. And so, after you have an event or a race that doesn't go your way and you come back to the team area, that was just one thing I saw that we improved on as the meet went on, as the event went on. It went from something like, man, I'm not really sure how to console. What do you say to somebody who probably just feels like their dream has been shattered? Right, so close yet so far. And that was something that I definitely saw my fellow teammates, and I saw the coaching staff. That's not something you kind of get trained on, but I saw more and more just some real connection happening. Real connection. And I'll tell this one quick story, and it's actually outside of the pool. One of my good buddies, Ezra Freck, he's actually, we're both representatives for LA28, or the LA28, right? They abbreviated. The LA28 is a brand. So we're both representatives, but either way, track and field athlete, I don't know his exact class, but great kid, man. Went to the games, ended up coming in, I think, fourth or fifth overall, heartbroken, crushed. And I had already won my bronze at that time, and I know he was feeling a lot of pressure, like all of us are. We come together for lunch the next day. We sit down, and again, like everybody's all night probably been telling this kid, like, dude, it's okay, like da 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 da. Like nobody wants to hear all that, man. I don't want to hear that, like I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. But we sat down and this dude's 15, 16 years old, a kid. Like, I'm 15, 16. Dude, no, I was not number 4 in the world at anything. So but I just told him that story about Michael Phelps that believe it or not, a lot of swimmers are not familiar with, but some of them are. Michael Phelps went to his first games at what, 15, 16? Dude, he came home empty-handed. Came home empty-handed from his first games, and then went on to become the most decorated Olympic athlete in history. So just trying to provide perspectives and prime shifts for athletes. Obviously it's helpful to have before you suffer a major loss or a major victory, but even after, there's still great value in just understanding that, number one, in no way, shape, or form has this win or loss defined you and made you who you are. Okay. And then number two, dude, time is still moving forward and the story is still being written. So what we have now is an opportunity. Listen, it's okay to walk out of here, come home with a little chip on your shoulder. You got something to prove, that's hardware. Trust me, that's hardware. And I think that's brought home more medals than a lot of things. So that's what I experienced on a national level. On an international level, I would just say that first and foremost, so much gratitude to the Japanese community, the statesmen that served us in the village, that maintained the aquatic arena and events. Really kind, literally just kind and clean. Like I can't even think of much else to put towards that. And I wish I could kind of give us more on that, but because the Paralympic Games did happen in the context of a Paralympic group before, right? Like, obviously, we're talking about how many countries are there in the world? 195 countries in the world, more or less 192 represented at the Paralympics. Everyone is, right? There's at least 15 different languages that are spoken across these 190 semi countries, not to mention the hundreds of different, cultural practices. And we're all wearing masks all the time, so like even something as simple as body language and that being able to transcend barriers of communication has now been severely severed. And some of the communal spaces like the cafeteria are partitioned for safety. But again, there were a lot of barriers to communication and I think to relationship for health reasons. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to, hopefully, for the next games is an opportunity to come back here on the SwimSwam podcast and say, yes, like this is something I learned from my international friend at the games.
Absolutely. We're excited for that moment as well. You brought up the next Olympics, right? Which is Paris 24, which where it's so funny. One Olympic cycle ends and immediately, in the US, we start the next one of like, all right, we're looking forward. What are we thinking? Certainly in the swimming space, right? We're just like, okay, Tokyo's done. What are you thinking about Paris? It's only 3 years away now, right? And so I always think that's funny that it's just always on to the next. But for you, as you mentioned earlier, it's on to the next, right? You are a spokesman of LA28, which is also funny to me because that's a big topic in the US now. And it's, I guess, 6 years away now.
Yep.
But 2 Olympics away, but it's getting a lot of traction still. We're still talking about it a lot. So for LA28, first of all, just your spokesperson for it, what are you doing now, 6 years out, to prepare for this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a really great question. So one thing that I think most of the country is not privy to is that the LA28 brand, for the past 3-4 years, they've actually been funding all of the Parks and Recs programs in the city of Los Angeles. So previously, these Parks and Recs programs were funded by the LA84 endowment, right, from the LA84 games in Los Angeles, and from the investments and profits, over years from that. The LA28 brand recently just took over that mantle. So as an ambassador, we go to events. I went to a Play LA event, which was like the big unveiling Play LA, promoting all sports, and for the first time ever, really pushing disability advocacy, disability participation in sports, really big on a city level. So that is one way that I've been involved. Obviously, me being a part of aquatics, and Janet Evans, shout out Janet. Janet Evans being the chief athlete officer over there at LA28. She's been instrumental in really driving the importance of aquatics programs and drowning prevention programs to inner city youth. So I'm looking forward to just more partnerships and opportunities to amplify that voice and that message.
Okay, so you mentioned getting the word out about drowning, about drowning prevention. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But first of all, I have to ask, as an unbiased American citizen, why are the LA28 games going?
I'm sorry, the unbiased got me. Let me pull my bias out of this. Ask me again, brother.
As an unbiased American citizen, why are the LA 2028 Olympics and Paralympics going to be the best games in history?
Okay. Well, I'll entertain you here, and really lean on this unbiased aspect. I think, and I'm really leaning to the unbiased here. We're talking about it's going to be hosted in one of I think it's definitely top 5. I want to say California is the 3rd largest GDP in the world, right? Like it's up there just in terms of finances and entertainment. So that alone, that's a hell of a platform to be standing on. And we've got venues. We've got all the venues that you could ever want for literally anything. So I just think this, like, we're bringing the show to Hollywood. That's probably one of the unbiased. Like, that's kind of why, man. That's why.
I love it. That's why. It's as simple as that. So I'm pretty confident we're going to have you back on as these games approach. You are a spokesperson for these LA28 games. We got 6 years, so we've got time. But in the more immediate future, you wear a lot of different hats, and one of those is as the managing director of Aquatics Today, which is hosting the inaugural Aquatics Equity Summit in 2 days on April 20th. And this Wednesday, this will be a recording on Monday. It's going to come out later today on Monday. You're hosting the Aquatics Equity Summit on Wednesday. It's all virtual. It starts at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. It's 2 hours. It's a free event. It's going to focus on how aquatics can unite communities and empower individuals of all ages, genders, ethnicities, religions, disabilities, and sexual orientations. So Jamal, as the managing director of Aquatics Today, tell us a little bit about this summit and why it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing about me, Brother Coleman, is that I'm an athlete, 100%. But I think what sets me apart is that I'm an athlete for the purpose of magnifying and amplifying the voices and the needs of the unheard, underserved communities on a global platform. That's why I'm an athlete. That's why I get up. That's why I swim. That's really what drives me. That's what helps me maintain discipline, is knowing that one of the rewards for my success is a bigger platform to be able to push forward something way important, way more important than who touched the wall first, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Things like war, and ultimately one of my main campaigns is the war on drowning. And we all know, right? That's a big one. Drowning is the, leading cause of death around the world, top 10 easily, always. And it's a huge problem here in the United States. And we already know, again, a lot of you are well versed with some of these statistics that African American children, Hispanic children, Caucasian children, also, many different minorities. There's a spectrum of how many of these people are drowning per capita, and our more diverse ethnic groups are the ones that are drowning more. And so the reason why I knew this Aquatics Equity Summit had to happen before summer, had to happen at the top of the year. This is only one of 6 virtual events we'll be putting on this year, by the way, is because I just felt that our aquatics community needed to be reminded that this desire for, more equity, more diversity, it's almost like a light desire. It's like a humming buzz, right? We kind of know it's necessary now, but we're missing that. No, this is a need. When we talk about LA 2028, and I even project beyond LA 2028, and not to backtrack here, but this is in some ways a challenge, Well, what's going to happen to all of our aquatics programming after everybody's not looking forward to LA 2028 anymore? Does it all go back down? Do we all now start, defunding aquatics? Do we start defunding opportunities for people to learn how to swim? That's what this Aquatics Equity Summit is about. It's about ultimately opening up this industry to match and represent the growing populace, the growing census changes in this country, right? I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review the census lately, but we live in a very diverse country, extremely diverse, from religion to ethnic background to sexual orientation. However, our swim community and industry does not reflect that. And one of the reasons why I'm driving this home so much is because sometimes we really got to talk about those bottom lines. Like, I'm all about heart and I'm all about feeling, but I also understand sometimes that's not enough to create change in action, right? And so I present the pandemic that we just experienced and how hard of a hit our swim industry took. People not buying bathing suits, right? Competition's not happening. Across the nation, I'm sure you guys have heard of this. There's a lifeguard shortage across the entire nation right now. We can't even get enough lifeguards to open up aquatics facilities and programs. That's going to be the next summit we're having, by the way, on May 11th. But the reason this is happening on such a massive scale, though, why? All our eggs were in one basket. Not enough opportunities for people of other diverse cultures, beliefs, religions, systems, communities to have, number one, adequate swim education, whether that be low, no cost, or private. Number two, not enough training to create the aquatics leaders of the next generation that accurately represent their communities. Who's an aquatics leader for let's just, and it's not always the most PC, but who's the aquatics leader for the Hispanic community? Who are aquatics leaders for the Islamic community? Who are aquatics leaders for white swimming community, for Black swimming community, who for the gay community? Who are these people? Well, we may be able to name one or two here and there, but for the most part, there are a lot of empty seats and chairs because those pipelines and systems have not been developed. So ultimately, that's what this Aquatics Equity Summit is about. It's meant to be a forum. We've got some amazing speakers, representatives from United Nations speaking. We've got the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion from USA Swimming speaking. We've got Red Cross DEI representatives, Islamic Relief Fund CEOs speaking, executive director at where is that? Diversity in Aquatics, an amazing organization speaking. We've also got Ashley Johnson, gold medalist, Olympic water polo player speaking. And of course, myself, Jamal Hill, bronze medalist Paralympian from the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics.
So there's a loaded roster. There's a lot to learn here. The Aquatics Equity Summit, it's happening on April 20th, 10:30 a.m. Pacific. You can register now for this free event at aquatics-equity.com. That's aquatics-equity.com. Sign up today if you want to be a part of this. It's just 2 hours. There's a lot going on, a lot to learn. Jamal, thank you so much for dropping in on the pod today. Really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us. Do you have any parting thoughts, or is there anything we've missed before we sign off today?
Mr. Hodges, I appreciate the opportunity to join you, man. I gotta say this right now. I'm offering you an invitation. I love the SwimSwam platform. Just the voice you guys are always covering, literally breaking news from Paralympic records being broken. One of my buddies, Yassina Dermandash, was just featured in an article, right? He broke a short course yards record. So it's just so amazing to see that like the entire spectrum is on your radar and is being acknowledged and is being honored. And that you guys are really bringing a lot of integrity to the aquatic space through your media platform. So listen, I'd love to have you on the Aquatics Today podcast sometime and just, again, highlight the amazing things you guys do to our community of aquatics directors and aquatics professionals. But yeah, man, thank you so much. And I guess a parting word for anyone out there. This is a parting word for my swimmers out there, my swim coaches out there. We're talking about, world championships. We're talking about Paris 2024. We're talking about LA 2028. One thing, I've learned at this point in time is, dude, step one is always just to make the team, So like however big your plans are, whatever you're going to do, whatever hype is around you, like at the end of the day, step one, you always got to make the team. I had to make this world championship team. That was step one. And then step two, you got to make the final. You make the team. Step two is you got to make the final, right? And then obviously step three is, dude, you leave it all in the pool. That's when you when you close your eyes at the end of the race for that extra bit of power. But that's it. Keep it simple. Focus. Have those really huge goals that are massive, and keep them to yourself. Keep them to your super tight knit inner circle, and just remember to keep yourself humble and keep the steps in line. Before you can become a Paralympic or Olympic gold medalist, you got to make the team. And before they give you that medal, you got to make the final. So just take it one step at a time and enjoy. I promise you, enjoy every moment, because it's the only one you'll have like that. Thanks for having me today, brother.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.